Good afternoon, dear members of media. We just had a bilateral meeting with my Finnish counterpart, Pekka Haavisto, and he also, just a while ago, addressed also our ambassadors' conference. One of the main issues that we discussed was regional security and support for Ukraine. All kinds of assistance to Ukraine as it continues to fend off Russia and Russian aggression. Secondly, we also spent a great deal of time discussing expansion of NATO. As you very well know, two countries are still to ratify Finland's and Sweden's application for membership in North Atlantic Treaty Organization. I reaffirmed to my colleague Latvia's support to quick accession of Finland and Sweden to NATO de jure. De facto, of course, Sweden and Finland are equal members of NATO. However, we do have a full understanding among us that in current conditions, the membership of Sweden and Finland in North Atlantic Treaty Organization is important not only for regional security but also for the security of the alliance as a whole. My colleague also briefed me about the progress in this regard, and I also confirmed that irrespective of how dramatic the situation may be, and we also highly condemn the actions that have been taking place on the part of some of the officials in Stockholm. Despite all that, we would like to nevertheless have a balanced resolution of different issues so that our neighboring countries on the other side of the Baltic Sea are becoming members of NATO. And of course, we also spent a great deal talking about the NB cooperation. Latvia is coordinating Nordic-Baltic cooperation this year. We have a number of joint meetings and joint visits of ministries of foreign affairs. One of such took place last November, December, to Kiev. All foreign ministers traveled together to Ukraine to express support to Ukraine and strengthen its energy system. We also talked about special ad hoc tribunal for investigating Russia's war crimes in Ukraine. We also discussed the very unfortunate big anniversary of the beginning of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. We will also have a UN discussion, and we will also have a separate discussion on the 10-point plan proposed by Mr. Zelensky, which we fully support, by the way, at the national level, which would pave the way to restoring the peace in Europe and restoring the territorial integrity of Ukraine. Now I would like to pass it over to my Finnish colleague. I suppose you will have more questions to him considering the situation around membership and so on and so forth. But I would like to nevertheless thank the Minister for finding the time to visit Riga and also address our ambassadors and share his views on the current foreign affairs. And we had indeed a good opportunity to discuss various issues today.
Thank you, Edgars. Mr. Rinkēvičs, it's great to be here in Riga today, and of course our bilateral cooperation between Finland and Latvia has always been very intensive. We have very good bilateral relations, and I have to confess that I'm time to time picking your brains, also calling to Riga, asking your opinion on different developments, particularly in this part of the Europe, and have been appreciating very much our close bilateral cooperation. Of course, we today were discussing about the Russian aggression against Ukraine. We condemn the Russian action and, of course, are asking Russia to withdraw from those areas in Ukraine that it has occupied unlawfully. It's very important that we work closely in European Union for solidarity to Ukraine. We have hopefully the next sanction package coming, the 10th sanction package. It's very important that we have been successful of already putting heavy sanctions on Russia. It's also important that the European Peace Facility has been working in helping countries to give weapons to Ukraine to defend themselves. Finland just last Friday made a decision of supporting Ukraine with additional 400 million euros military package. It's the biggest package that we have been giving. Our military support is now around 600 million euros altogether. And we have, of course, then, in addition, humanitarian support, for example, building homes for people who have lost their houses and homes in this terrible war. And it's very important also, that was mentioned by you, that you are chairing now the Nordic-Baltic 8. It's an important group. We really had an excellent visit in Kiev in last December together. And it was important to bring the common Nordic-Baltic message also, and message of solidarity to Ukraine. As you know, our President Niinistö has just visited yesterday Kiev, met with President Zelensky, and of course confirmed Finland's continued support to Ukraine in these circumstances, including also the issue of accountability. It's important that we find mechanisms how those who have committed crimes and war crimes are put have the full responsibility on their crimes. We also discussed about the Finnish and Swedish NATO membership, our applications. We are very grateful to Latvia and 28 NATO countries that they have so rapidly ratified Finnish and Swedish membership applications. And of course we are waiting for 2 additional countries, Hungary and Turkey, to ratify as soon as possible. There's been some hiccups on our way with Turkey. Some of these demonstrations in Stockholm were not helpful on the time-wise and on the timetable of this ratification. We are expecting that towards the Vilnius NATO summit, the ratification, both Finland and Sweden could go on, and we are working very closely with Sweden on these issues currently. Of course, as a coming NATO member, we expect Finland to be an active part of the NATO. We think that we are a security provider to NATO cooperation, and we have been saying always that we have 1,300-kilometer common border with Russia, and we want to bring to NATO a peaceful border between us and Russia in these circumstances. Thank you once more for this possibility of visit you, and you are wholeheartedly welcome to visit Finland as well.
I'll be now taking the role of the press secretary.
So I will now be taking the role of press secretary. So colleagues, if you have any questions, yes, TV3, please.
First question for Minister Haavisto regarding NATO's enlargement. How do you see the way forward to overcome the deadlock caused by Turkey? And if I may, a question for Minister Rinkēvičs, and I will go on in Latvian. Turcija faktiski tur gūstā visu.
Turkey is currently keeping the whole alliance as a hostage. Don't we really have a member state, like, for example, United States, that could pressure Turkey to stop impeding the accession of Sweden and Finland? Thank you.
Well, how do we see the way forward with Turkey? We are, of course, in the hands of those 2 countries that have not yet ratified. We know that NATO is a club that all the members have to ratify, new members. Hungary has promised us that they will proceed in the parliament in February, probably late February. And with Turkey, we don't have currently a timetable. Due to this incident in Stockholm, Turkey has announced that they will freeze the tripartite cooperation, the process that we agreed in Madrid last summer. And of course this tripartite cooperation has been very important, because there we can take stock of those steps that Finland and Sweden has been taking, for example, to fighting the terrorism and making actions against the PKK, which is also a terrorist organization in Finland and Sweden and in the whole European Union area. We feel actually in Finland and in Sweden that we have fulfilled those issues that were agreed in this tripartite agreement last summer in Madrid, and of course expecting that Turkey would then make the next move. That Turkey has election spring. This spring might be part of the delay. Their elections are now decided to be in mid-May, and then of course we see a short time slot after the elections and before the Vilnius summit, where we hope that the process of ratification would go on.
I would like to add that North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, is a club which is based on unanimity, which is very important. Whenever a membership of new countries is considered, we have to evaluate the readiness of a country to defend other NATO allies in case of an attack. This is not just an empty promise. This is a serious military and political commitment, a responsibility. We know that each country has its own interests, concerns, and its own agenda. And like my Finnish colleague just said, I would like to nevertheless remind to you that in our understanding, both Finland and Sweden, as regards to what was agreed last year during the Madrid summit in the tripartite format, agreed by the heads or signed and verified by the heads of Turkey, Sweden, Finland, and NATO, all of that has been implemented. We see that there are obviously attempts to delay the membership of Sweden and Finland in NATO, absolutely unacceptable incidents, burning of Quran or Bible or any religious hatred or hate speech or discrimination of any religious or social groups is absolutely unacceptable and should be condemned in any democratic society and should be punished also according to the law. And maybe we should probably dig deeper. Maybe later on we will find out who is behind these incidents. Are those just some individuals or maybe third countries that are acting against the expansion of NATO? The time will show. In this given situation, we have to respect Turkey's legitimate demands regarding its security. We have to be aware of Turkey's past and history. However, as war is raging in Europe, when virtually all NATO countries are under threat, faster accession of Finland and Sweden is not only in the interests of our region, but also in the interests of the whole alliance. We as politicians very well know that election campaigns make it difficult to resolve certain issues. Nevertheless, in the heat of the pre-election campaign, I hope that our Baltic friends, Sweden and Finland, will not be impeded from membership in NATO de jure. It will happen as soon as possible whenever a solution which serves the legitimate interests of Turkey and the whole alliance and our region and Finland and Sweden in particular is found, the membership will swiftly commence. The accession will swiftly commence. Unfortunately, diplomacy takes time and patience, but the result will, I hope, be positive. We also have another question here from the floor. Please introduce yourself as well. Thank you.
I'm journalist of Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. I have a question for the Minister Pekka Haavisto. A week ago, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Russia will respond in a military way to the accession of Finland and Sweden to NATO. So, what reaction do you expect from the Russian side after joining to the North Atlantic Alliance?
Thank you for a good question. Of course, first, when we applied last spring NATO membership together with Sweden, we were expecting all kinds of threats, all kinds of action. It could be hybrid, cyber action, and so forth. But the situation has been quite calm. The Russian reaction has been recently asking what kind of NATO member probably Finland and Sweden be, and certainly they will also increase their military presence in the border of Finland and so forth. But as I said, our border is calm. There has been no incidents. We are keeping the border open for people who are working, students, people who have close relatives, and we have this, even if the cooperation is very little currently with Russia. For example, the border cooperation works with these special groups. We don't accept any tourists from Russia at the moment. So currently things are calm.
And Latvian television, yes, Matis Sarnicāns also has questions.
To Finnish minister, are you ready to join NATO without Sweden? Is this even a possibility that you consider?
Well, we actually, first on our cooperation with Sweden, of course, Sweden historically is our closest partner. And already now, when we are not yet members of NATO, we have had a very close military cooperation with Sweden. And for example, on Friday in Ramstein, we signed an additional memorandum of intent even for intensified military cooperation with Sweden in certain circumstances. And that, of course, leads us to the situation that when we look our region and any military threats to our region, we will face those challenges together with Sweden. And that's the reason why we need to be part of the same military alliance. And when you look the wider region, the whole Baltic Sea region, and if you think the Baltic Sea region without Sweden, something is missing on your defense seriously, not only regarding Finland, but also cooperation with the Baltic states is essential. And that's the reason why we applied together the membership with Sweden and why we are heading towards the NATO together.
Vai ir kādi jautājumi? Rihards Blūma, lūdzu, Latvijas rādio.
Rihards Blūma, Latvian radio, please. There's one more question. Diana doesn't trust me as a press secretary anymore.
Of Finland, two questions. The first thing about NATO appliance, can you say that Sweden and Finland should now just wait for what comes next after the elections in Turkey, and then you will see what happens, or the diplomatic work will continue behind closed doors even up until the elections? That's the first question. And the other one about military assistance to Ukraine. Finland said that it is willing to give Ukraine the tanks as well, but this decision was not made. So what are the preconditions for Finland to this decision to be made?
Thank you for both questions. First, on the issue, of course, you understand that in these circumstances, when we have a war in Europe and all risks are there, and we have seen the explosions of the gas pipeline in the Baltic Sea area and so forth, we feel, both in Sweden and Finland, that the risks are very close to us, geographically and physically. And that also creates concerns among our public and our political decision makers and so forth, and we think that all delays of our NATO membership, unnecessary delays, are of course increasing all kinds of security risks, both for Sweden and Finland. And those who are making the provocations, which also Minister Rinkēvičs mentioned about, are actually playing with the security of Finland and Sweden. And this time, before the Turkish elections, we are not just waiting what's happening, but we are keeping very active contacts. I have been in contact with the Turkish Minister Çavuşoğlu. We have been in contact with the US. We have been in contact with the key NATO European partners on this issue, trying to find ways, of course, to speed up the process as much as we can as candidate countries. Then about our military support. First of all, this military package that we gave last Friday with 400 million euros did not include anything about the tanks. That military package, we don't reveal the content of the package for security reasons, but I can say that it was heavy weaponry based on the requests of Ukraine, exactly that type of weapons that Ukraine has been asking for, and a weaponry that can be used immediately. And that's important because the need is there. On the tank issue and on the Leopard issue, we definitely have some Leopards in Finland as well, and we have been reacting that if there is a common package now hopefully Germany will be part of that package. We are ready to participate in one or another way. There are many ways to do it, because we know that this Leopard issue also needs training for the drivers, for the maintenance and so forth. It needs spare parts, it needs the whole ecosystem of the Leopard tanks, and we will consider what is the best path for us or best way to participate when the package starts to be ready.
Thank you. I would like to thank all the members of the press. Thank you all for the press conference.